With that, I'm delighted to introduce Mike Kunkle with SPARXiQ. He's the Vice President of Sales Effectiveness Services. And with that, Mike, welcome. Great to have you here.
Great to be here. Hello, everyone. Always excited to be presenting this content and to be associated with MDM. I'm really impressed, guys, with what I've seen you do with this sales GPS, and appreciate the opportunity to talk to people about the 6 steps they can take to position their sales talent for growth. And this presentation is going to be somewhat of a whirlwind. It's designed to give you an overview of a variety of aspects of how to do exactly this. So there's also some additional information in the appendix you can dig into even deeper. Whenever you're doing this kind of work, right, the work that you've been listening to Mike and Tom talk about for a while in the transformation series, it's really about a series of baton handoffs. You're moving from strategy to tactics to execution. And this gives you an opportunity to not just do strategic thinking, but to start to bring in design thinking and tactical planning to get to the point where you can apply systems thinking. And that's what we're going to talk about, right? You've gone from mission, vision, objectives, really thinking about the SWOT analysis, market, buyers, products, services, org structure, compensation. How do you need to retool things to move forward in the new normal? And then what's the go-to-market plan for sales, marketing, and service that you're going to put together to help you execute that strategy? At some point, though, it gets to be all about execution. That's where I'm going to focus today, on hiring, training, coaching, supporting, managing, leading your team in developing your talent, and creating the environment and the culture in which they can thrive in a high-performance setting. So that's where we're headed. So to do that, we're going to talk about these 6 steps and the related questions that you need to answer as you go through. First up, Salesforce diagnostics. You have to ask yourself, is my current team wired for this new normal? I've just done this planning. I've just created a go-to-market plan. So do I have the right people and the right seats on the bus to be able to execute that plan? What are their capabilities? And then what do they need from me and the organization to be able to execute effectively? From a systems thinking perspective, and we'll talk more about what this actually means, but you have to step back and say, how can systems thinking improve our efficiency and effectiveness as we execute? From a hiring perspective, goes back up to what you learned in diagnostics. When you need to replace your sales reps or managers, or it becomes time to actually grow your team, how do you ensure that you're selecting the exact right people for the right roles to deliver on what you need them to do? And then sales enablement, which is a word I remember speaking from stage at a conference where people kind of turned their head and looked at me like my dog does, like, what's exactly is sales enablement, right? So how do best-in-class organizations sell, train, and prepare and enable their sales force to ensure adoption of their sales methodology and process and practices, and to get the results that they need? Coaching, always a big piece of this, right? And are your frontline managers actually prepared to coach effectively and support and develop the teams to get the results? And then lastly, a sales management perspective. And I've heard Mike Marks say a dozen times, if I've heard it once, we have to move from being a sales-led organization to a manager-led organization. Do you have a sales management operating system in place? Do you have a cadence of what these managers need to do and the best practices to do it, to ensure that you get the disciplined execution of your plan and all the things that we're talking about here already? So those are the 6 steps, and those are the questions that you need to answer. And again, you're going to get these slides and be able to go back and look at this, reference it, and ask yourself these questions for your organization. So let's dive into them one at a time. Salesforce diagnostics is first up. And one of my favorite sayings, diagnose first, then prescribe. Now, we're going to talk for just a second about evaluation. We have a product here, forgive me, right, called Talent GPS Evaluation. Here's my bold statement. Whether you use this or whether you use something else, focus not on the product, Focus on the concept here. You need to do something, some way other than gut feel to assess the facts about your sales team and answer the difficult questions. Do you have the right people in their roles? What are their gaps? Can you close them? Why aren't you generating more new business? Are you actually executing your sales process consistently? There are tons of questions like this and even more about people and skills, the infrastructure you've got in place, and the training and coaching and development recommendations that you need to uncover. Where are your opportunities for improvement with your people and in your infrastructure? And what should the priorities be for training, enablement, and one-on-one coaching? This is the diagnose first piece where you need to use some tool, some consultant, someone to get in there and help you figure out what do you have in place today? Where are you? What's point A, current state? Where do you want to go? What's point B or desired future state? And what are the things relative to people skills, infrastructure, and training and development and coaching that you need to do to close those gaps and move from point A to point B? Right? And there are ways that you can do this and reports that you can look at. You can slice and dice your sales force in a variety of ways. Those who are hunting, the account managers, those who are serving and taking transactional orders, whatever it might be, find a way to dig in and understand the team that you have in place versus the team that you need. The bottom line here, folks, is don't guess at some of the most important decisions that you're going to make about your sales force and for your company's future. You need to have the right people in the right roles to be able to execute against your tactical plan that supports your strategy that you've put together so far. Bottom line first there. Next up, systems thinking. So what exactly is systems thinking? I talk about this all the time, and again, occasionally I get that doghead tilt. A system is any group of interacting, interrelated, interdependent parts, right? All of these disparate things that sort of connect up together that form a complex and a unified whole with a specific purpose. Thank you, Daniel Kim, right? That's how he defines it. But more simply, think about the human body. Right? We have a circulatory system, a nervous system, all across the board here. All of these various systems working together. And when that works that way, when it happens that way, you're a healthy, high functioning human being. If you have a problem with one of these systems, just one of them can take you down. And if it doesn't, it can at least put you off of your game, meaning that you just can't perform at the highest levels. Same thing with a car, right? You look at all the systems on the car on the right, from body systems to exhaust to powertrain. If you've got an 8-cylinder car, for those of you old enough to remember those, and only 4 of those cylinders are actually working and firing, that car is not going to drive very well, right? And then even bigger or deeper, if you take a look at one of those systems, like the engine system on the left-hand side, right? There are so many different pieces and moving parts of that it required for that to function. So there are levels of systems in an organization, right? And how is it different in companies? Look, bottom line is not. We have systems for hiring, compensating people, training them, coaching and management. We have processes, practices, policies, all of which the way we do them ends up being our culture. But the systems support how you want to do things in your company, which makes them, my favorite definition of culture, the way we do things around here, right? So this is a systems approach, and you'll see how we tie some of this together. So for our purposes in any type of sales performance improvement work, this is how I define a system. It's a method really of critical thinking and organization design, where you analyze those relationships between the various parts of your company and to understand them, align them, and to make better decisions about how to improve the performance. And by doing that, get better business outcomes, right? And this is how we're going to use systems as we go through with our approach to talent. The bottom line here, folks, be a systems thinker. Get the functions, the people, the processes, the technology in alignment with that strategy that you work so hard to develop and the tactical plans that you want to execute. And you want to avoid having people in the same boat rowing in different directions, right? Sometimes I refer to that differently, talking about just moving the deck chairs around on the Titanic, right? And I see that in far too many organizations, especially today with the pressures of of COVID and a pandemic, a lockdown, and the resulting, economic challenges, right? This is the time to not have people going in different directions, but to be rowing the boat in the same direction. Having those right people is part of the sales hiring system. Now, look, some of you are probably wondering, why would Mike talk to us about hiring right now? Because if you don't set it up right now, which is the ideal time when you're ready to expand and grow, you'll still be hiring people the same old way that you always did, right? So there is a way to set up the right system for your company. You want to determine the sales competencies, determine the traits that are required for success in a given role. That allows you to create job documentation, and that includes even sourcing and recruiting ads, right? But how are you defining this particular role? Then you can select what I call psychometric assessments, right? And these are just basically assessments or online tests that people take. And folks, I'm not talking about personality assessments here. Those are not proven to be highly effective at this type of selection and development. You want to look for something that's sales specific, that is normative versus ipsative. You can look those things up, right? But normative basically means it's designed in a way that allows you to compare the person you're assessing to a larger group of highly successful salespeople. And it's called norming, but it allows you to see how they compare to those folks, right? You want something that is statistically validated by a reliable and neutral third party with predictive validity. And if it doesn't have those things, I'd say run in the other direction. Then you want to consider your interviewing. And I think there are two forms of this that are really important. One is behavioral interviewing, where you ask questions like, tell me about a time when. And the other are hypothetical judgment tests, where you glean situations from your top producers that they've been in that were difficult and find out what did they do to resolve that situation to their favor. And then you create questions around those. So when someone can't answer a behavioral question, for example, because they haven't had a specific experience, you might ask them a what would you do if situation, just to test their judgment as well. This last one always surprises me that more people aren't doing it. Could you imagine hiring a musician without hearing them play, or a basketball player without seeing them play a game? But we will hire salespeople almost sight unseen based on their interviews. And if there's one thing that a salesperson can sell, it's themselves, right? Whether or not they can move your product, right? So consider some skill validations where you get them to role play some things. If you're hiring for somebody to set appointments, have them pick up the phone and call you and try to set an appointment with you. You can give them the details about products or services or about you, right, to help them put a script or something together. But if their job is setting appointments or getting in front of somebody, and they can't demonstrate those skills to you, why on earth would you hire them? And then there's the normal stuff, and I'd refer you to HR and legal in your companies to ensure that you're doing things right for your state, et cetera. But consider the types of background and reference checks that you want to do. Now, with this, right, if you follow this system, it doesn't tell you what the process is for you. It tells you what things to consider. Then you need to work through and pick the elements that you're going to use, right? When are you going to use the assessments? I always recommend using them very high up, right? When will what kind of hypothetical questions will you ask? You work through this to determine what's the process that we're going to use. And then here's an example process. You determine sourcing and you run ads. You assess your candidates and interpret those results. That allows you to screen and schedule interviews with candidates who did well, conduct those behavioral interviews, include some hypothetical judgment questions in there, run and score the skill validations, and then calibrate the results at the end, getting people together to talk about that candidate to ensure that if they rated somebody a 4 on something, what did that really mean to them, and then ensure that you're calibrated across and making a great hiring decision. Now, there seems like there could be a little pain in this. I'll tell you, there's only one pain greater than going through this process to hire effectively, and that's not going through this process to hire effectively, because you won't get the results you need from your people, and you'll have a higher level of turnover than you really want. The other question is, how do managers plug into this, right? And so your managers, right, aren't really doing everything in here, but they do need to know how to interpret the results from these assessments, how to conduct the behavioral interviews and do hypothetical judgment questions and run and score skill validations. And then at the end, of course, they use all that information and the calibration to be able to hire effectively. Bottom line here, folks, get sales hiring right. A lot of salespeople will sell themselves better than anything else. Get past the hype and hire the right people for the right roles who will deliver the results that you need. Now let's think a little bit more about systems. Remember, I promised you we're going to bounce over some overview things here that you can look into more deeply and tie together. I'm going to share at least two of the systems here in this section: sales readiness and sales training. And if you look at this diagram, the sales readiness system's on the left, sales training system on the right, and the sales training system is actually a subset of the readiness system. You can't do sales readiness without considering sales training in it. But the sales training system is so important that it makes sense to blow it out and look at the pieces and parts. And this is like we looked at the car earlier. The car's got a variety of systems, but when you look at the engine, you can go deeper and take a deeper dive into what makes that engine work. And then there's even another nested system. If you look at the sales training system, you see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Those are the 5 stages of sales mastery and behavior change. We're going to take a look at these together. Sales readiness starts here. It starts being focused on the market and your buyers. Who are the buyer personas that you sell to? What are the things that they care about? What's their coin op, as I call it? Challenges, opportunities, impacts, the opportunities that they've got, the outcomes that they're looking for, the needs and priorities that they've got, right? You need to understand your market and your buyers. And then what's the buying process exit criteria, or and that's geeky process language, right? But basically it means, what do these buyers need to see, hear, feel, understand, and believe from you to know that you're the best choice to help them get what they're trying to accomplish? And then what's the content that you would need to share with people? Is it just product related? Is there something else? Are there testimonials? What's the content that these buyers need to make decisions based on how they want to buy? And then how do you prepare your salespeople to have those conversations with the buyers, with the domain, right? The industry and business and solution acumen they need, understanding your sales process and the methodologies, the way that you want them to sell, and then whatever technology that you're using that supports them in that sales journey. Get those things in place along with the analytics to track everything, right? The training, the content, the sales behavior, the outcomes, and then train them effectively to do all of the things north of that line in the system, right? And then if you break out the training system, there's 3 major parts to this, and it's all color coded. The first part is preparing for change. You need to ensure, first of all, that whatever training content you're providing, if you can get them to use it, which is always the challenge and what this system will help you do, it will get results in the real world. If you don't have that, it makes no sense to go through all of this. Then you want to design a great learning experience to help them be able to absorb and use the content. And especially the third one, you want to engage, enable, and empower your frontline sales managers to understand the content, buy into that content, and be able to then reinforce it, which they're going to do in this next phase. That's how you prepare for the change. Then it's about guiding the change. It's teaching the content with a great learning design. It's validating somehow that that learning occurred, sustaining the knowledge, and then giving them a chance to practice. You know, there isn't a sports team on earth that would go onto the field without practicing. They also review game film, right? But we'll just throw salespeople against our customers and see how well it works. Right? Give them a chance to practice and get some feedback, and then apply that feedback and get better. Right? There's a great practice and feedback loop there. And then how are you going to help them take the training content and actually apply it to the job? What job aids or cheat sheets or things will you create that might help them do that? And then how will your managers coach them to mastery on these things, right? Because just because, starting back at number 1, just because somebody learned something, 2, remembered it, 3, practiced it, 4, tried it, doesn't mean that they did it well or they're going to continue to do it. And that's where coaching to mastery comes from. And then you can cement the change in your organization by getting the metrics and measures in place, manage to behavior and performance expectations, and then manage and lead the change until it actually cements in your culture through your performance management. That system has mined gold for me in taking great training content and getting it used by salespeople in the field, having it supported by managers, and helping you get the results that you're looking for from it. The bottom line here, folks, for sales enablement, readiness, and training, great enablement and training do not happen by accident. We train too many people in event-based training to get nowhere. Orchestrate the learning and the application and the mastery purposefully, and you absolutely will see results. If you avoid the discipline, I can promise you this, you'll avoid the ROI too. Now, there's a note on the bottom. There's a lot more to sales enablement, and a ton of that's in the appendix, but this is a great start. If you get this stuff right, you'll see some great results. So this all sort of ties together with what I call the sales management system. One more system here. Let's take a look at this. First things first, remove the barriers to your frontline sales managers being engaged. I once had a company come to me and say, Mike, could you help our managers coach better? I said, sure. How do you know that they need that? Well, we did a 360 and nobody's coaching. The reps are saying they're not getting coaching. So I said, can I talk to your managers? And after a couple of days in a conference room and outlining everything the managers are asked to do and putting reasonable time requests to all of that, it was a ridiculous number of hours per week, 110. Now, look, only one guy was trying to do that, and he was brand new, and he was burnt to a crisp. All the other seasoned vets, they only did the things that got them yelled at by corporate if they didn't do it. And guess what? None of those were coaching. Let's get out of the sales prevention business. Let's get out of the coaching business, coaching prevention business. Remove the barriers that prevent your sales managers from spending time working with reps, developing them, because that's their job, right? That's step one. Next is sales hiring. We've gone through that system. We've talked about the part that managers play. Help them master their part in sales hiring. This piece is probably the most fun for me. Then you want to implement a sales management operating system. It starts with understanding your sales process, whatever it is, your sales methodology, the way you want your reps selling, and the entire customer life cycle from over here, they have no clue who you are, to over here, they're your best long-term customer you could possibly imagine, right? Taking a look at that entire life cycle and figuring out, how do we want to be selling and working with these clients across the life cycle, not just right here, right now? And then, look, I don't know that these list of things, these meetings, these activities are the right ones for your company. These are questions you have to ask yourself, right? But generally, territory management, lead management, qualifying opportunities, managing those opportunities to a win, the pipeline management required to do that, forecasting accurately, managing your key accounts, and the team and rep meetings that the manager has are generally some things that fit into a good sales management operating system. You'll have to ask yourself the question, are these the right ones for us? And what team and rep meetings do I want managers to have? You want them to have one-on-ones, obviously, and some ride along or drive along or call along or listen to recording time, right? Spending one-on-one time with that rep and doing the coaching and field training that would be required. There's obviously a team meeting that probably happens at some regular cadence. You just need to determine the cadence. Maybe there's something called a learning huddle or a best practice sharing meeting that you want your managers to have. Whatever that is, figure out these activities, then figure out what's the cadence and the timeline you want them to occur. Is it weekly? Is it bi-weekly? Is it monthly, bi-monthly? Whatever it is, and get your sales managers into a rhythm. And then teach them for each one of these things, what does great look like, and what should each one of those meetings look like, feel like, how should they be run? This is how you develop a really great operating system. I've actually seen this in place at places like GE Capital, where they're known for their rhythm and their cadence. And at the time, right, in the glory days of GE before it was disassembled, right, actually using that to get great results from their people. Then it's the coaching stuff that's so important. ROAM is an acronym that I created called Results versus Objectives. You compare those two, and what are the activities the rep is doing to get the results, and what are the methodologies or the way they sell that's getting those results. If you look at results versus objective, it can start to tell you where do I need to focus, right? Because the results are less than the objectives, right? And then you look at their activities first. What are they doing? With whom? How often? And take a look at that. And if that doesn't fix the problem, then you look at the methodology or the quality of how they're selling. There's specific stuff about performance analysis and solutions. How do you know when training is the right solution to a business problem? How do you know when it's coaching instead, right? And then you look at actually how do you deliver as a manager field training, which doesn't necessarily today need to be in the field. It can be done like this over Zoom, right? But working one-on-one with your rep. How will you provide the training and coaching that you need to as a manager that will help them improve the performance and analytic issues that you found when you did ROAM? Then there's CRM and technology tools, whatever you're using. And then lastly, it's getting into a rhythm with sales performance management. This is the sales management system that I've used and helped companies put in place, that once you get your managers trained and able to do this, it helps you deliver all of the things that we just talked about with your talent to help them get the best results possible, right? The talent elements here are everything from hiring down through coaching and sales performance management. Removing the barriers you need to do anyway, CRM and technology tools, ERP, all a separate conversation. But if you focus on these pieces in your talent system, it will help you get where you want to go. Then lastly, it's creating a coaching culture to really foster continuous growth. It's about taking a look at your reps' competencies, the metrics, all of the things we looked at in ROAM, right? Making sure that the rep and manager are prepared to go on this journey together. The rep needs to own their development. The manager should be the guide or the Sherpa who's taking them along the journey. And then together they can go through the coaching process, diagnose, right? Where you look at results versus the objectives, you look at the activities, the methodology, all of the things to the left to figure out what is a plan that you can put in place to help this rep improve performance. And this might include personalized learning plans on the bottom. It could be field training you do as a manager, sales coaching, and the resulting action plans. Then it's the do and review stages. They're out actually executing these plans. You're observing them and providing additional coaching and feedback, and you loop through those until you actually get the results that you intended when you created the plan. When you're done with that, this is the piece that will actually create the culture change. You go right back to the beginning and get into an endless loop with this.
Hey, thanks, Mike.